Ladies and gentlemen, my name is John Rhodes. I've been asked to speak this night as an introduction for my good friend and colleague, Jordan Maxwell. Just as a prelude to introducing Jordan, I want to let everybody know tonight what kind of a magical period you are to get one of the elder statesmen of ufology and symbology out here to speak to you. In approximately 3 days from now, on November 3rd, we're going to be entering a period which comes into an area of a dark moon where the actual moon is darkened because it's a natural cycle of months. Every month we go through the dark moon. But on top of that, it is also a period in which, with the Maya, the planet Venus is actually crossing between the Earth and the Sun, but a little higher than crossing the face of the Sun, so it's not a true transit. But it is very important to the Maya. In addition to that, as many of us know, the Mayans' numbers were based on 13 and 260. On November 3rd, which is only 2 or 3 days away now, we're actually coming up on a point in which it's 3 cycles of 260 days till December 21st, 2012. And for the Maya, when combined with this numerology, or these numbers, combined with the fact that Venus is crossing between the Earth and the Sun, another very, very powerful symbol, is an indication that this is part of a portal that's about to open, a portal of an opportunity for all humanity. This evening, you're about to hear one of the elder statesmen of ufology. Before many of us were even adults, when we were still young children, the man you were about to see was doing exactly what he's doing today that many years ago. He is truly an elder statesman. He's a very knowledgeable, wise gentleman, and very gentle-natured, and a good friend of mine and all of ours. Ladies, please, and gentlemen, please, put your hands together for a nice welcome for Jordan Maxwell.
Thank you. The steps are getting more difficult every day.
Would you like a stool, Jordan?
I have one. A what? A stool?
A stool to sit on?
I do have one right here.
Okay.
Thank you, though.
Sure thing.
Yeah, I've come to a point in my life I don't want to stand anymore. I've been before many audiences, and it's very difficult standing for hours. I want to thank, first of all, the people who worked so hard to make this event possible. And they're the ones that have really worked hard. And Vicki, who has the vision to know of how important it is for people like mine to be able to come together. Because in the days that we are in now, most of the world is blind to everything that's going on. There's a scripture in the Bible in the Old Testament that says, where there is no vision, the people perish. And that is precisely where we are today in our world. The whole world of mankind, it would appear, has lost its vision. It's lost its humanity. It's lost its ability to even think. And most important, it's lost its spirituality. And therefore, the entire human race today seems to be living in the material, never realizing for a moment, generally speaking. There are, of course, those who are spiritually minded, but most people cast it off as religion, and as an exercise of the mind. But I am totally convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that there is a God, there is a divine presence in the universe that men have called God. But I'm smart enough to know that our word God is simply dog spelled backwards. And therefore, so much of our, if not probably all of our religious belief systems are based on man-made concepts and ideas that men have come up with. And God knows the mind of man is capable of coming up with all kinds of strange stuff. But normally, religion today, and this is the one thing that I've always been interested in, is theology and religion. And I believe that there are stories in the Old and New Testament that are most profound and most important. But the church today, the synagogues today, the Mosque of Islam, all three of the people of the book, all three of these religions are referred to as people of the book because all three rely on a book. And so the people of the book have books, but most of them don't read them. And among the people who do read the Bible, most don't even begin to understand what is actually being said. And Christians have made the mistake of accepting the New Testament as actual history and thereby missing the point of the whole story of Jesus. There is an encoded message in both the Old and New Testament. Both the Old and New Testament is an encoded message. And so much I would love to be able to talk about that subject, about Jesus, about the symbolism in that story of Jesus, which is actually, in my opinion, absolutely profound. Because there's so much more there that's right in your face, but unless you understand the symbolism in the Bible, you're never going to figure out what the story really is. All I would say tonight is that understanding the symbolism of the New Testament will absolutely amaze you when you begin to see the hidden message that's right in front of you. But that's the mystery of symbols anyway. That things can be right in front of you and you didn't see it. So one day soon I want to do maybe a 2 or 3 hour presentation just on the hidden symbolism of the New Testament. And when you see what the New Testament story of Jesus is really all about for the first time, it will be amazing. A lot of interesting and profound wisdom is in the Old Testament. I know I've been on the cutting edge of condemning religion, but I am not in any way condemning true spirituality. I have a question for you. Who has seen my video called The Messiah? Have you seen The Messiah? Okay, one person, good. Because I wanted to show you, I wanted to do the presentation tonight of Messiah. I actually have 3 new videos that are like part 1, part 2, and part 3. Started out with the Messiah, and then I have King Solomon's Temple, and you'll see all 3 on the table tonight. But the whole idea of the Messiah is especially important today. We hear people talking about the last days, the end times. We're living in the last and final days of the old world, and the end is coming. Well, all of that is man-made silliness based on ignorance and ill-informed knowledge about symbols. What I'd like to start off by saying, though, is that, and if you remember nothing, remember this. Nothing in this world is what it seems to be. Nothing. Religion is not what it promotes itself to be. Governments do not do what you think they do. Laws are not there for the same purpose you think they are. Banks don't loan money. The police are not here to protect you. Nothing in this world operates the way you think it does. And by not understanding, and I know I've used some of these illustrations before, but I'll use it again. If you have a two-story building and you're going to put a lot of weight on the second floor, like printing presses and whatever, if you're going to put a lot of weight on the second floor, the smart thing to do is to go downstairs first and get on a ladder with the building inspector and go up through the ceiling tiles and see if the floor is going to hold that kind of weight before you go building on it. And so what you're doing is you're standing underneath of the foundation you're going to build on to see if it's sturdy. So this is where we get our idea of understanding. Because unless you stand under a subject, if you're just buying it at what you see, that's not good enough. You need to go down below the surface and look at the real foundations of what it is you think you believe. Because you might find that you're going to find that nothing that you were told or understood about the world you live in was true. There are so many things, so many different avenues I could take this in. Just to give you an example, and I know you've heard some of these possibly, but courts do not do what you think they do. You need to understand who founded the idea, where it came from. Courts. I mean, you play basketball on a court. You play tennis on a court. How do you play tennis on a court? You play with a racket. And when you start breaking down words and terms that are used in government and banks, you begin to see that nothing that you understood about the world you live in, nothing was true. And our country today is falling apart and being destroyed because my people, the scripture says, my people are dying from a lack of knowledge. And that is precisely where we are today. We have a lot of scientific material out there, a lot of sophistication, but no human wisdom. The great teachers of wisdom are gone. One of the greatest men that ever lived at any time in history was a man named Manly Palmer Hall. Manly P. Hall was one of the greatest spiritual men probably the planet has ever seen. He wrote so many hundreds of articles and tons of books and gave hundreds and hundreds of lectures on the deep spirituality of life, where things have come from. He was one of my teachers. And when you begin to look at where ideas and concepts have come from in the spirit world, it's just amazing how much we don't know. I had a dear friend many years ago named Rabbi Marvin Antelman. I think Rabbi Marvin Antelman might still be alive, but this was back in the mid-'60s. And Rabbi Antelman and I used to talk a lot about the Jewish religion, Christianity. And he said to me once, he said, you know, both Jews and Christians read the scriptures, but they have no idea in the world what they're reading. Jews are just as bad as Christians. They don't really, they think they understand. Of course, the Christians have their experts, but they don't understand either. They're just spouting what they've been taught in some college or university. And so he began to explain to me all kinds of interesting things about the Old Testament and the New Testament and the days in which we're living. And I have come to appreciate that there's so much more in this world that we don't know. And so I'm at a loss for words as to know where to start, because there's so much out there that we don't know and so many things I'd like to talk about. I'll say a couple of things which are, I'm painting with a wide brush, but it's my opinion. This is just my opinion. I don't want to go to prison for saying something in law, but I'm just giving you an opinion. After looking at politics for 50 years and studying all the background of the different religious and political movements throughout the world, it is my opinion that today what we refer to around the world, but especially in our country, as republicanism, the Republican Party, if you bother to do some really in-depth research on the beginnings of the Republican Party, of the modern day Republican Party, the names that are involved in founding the Republican Party, where the money comes from, how it works, you will find that the Republican Party is a Nazi party. It comes directly out of Berlin, Germany, 1930s, 33, Adolf Hitler, Nazi. So I am totally convinced that the Republican Party, as it is put together here in America, is a Nazi movement. And I hate Nazis. I've always hated Nazism or any other kind of totalitarian dictatorship that would take our freedoms from us. Well, that's what the Republican Party is. It's a Nazi party. And go back and look at the names of the people in the Republican movement. You will see these are the same kind of names. There's been many reference books written about this. So that's my opinion about the Republican Party, so much for them. The Democratic Party, as far as I'm concerned, is a totally Soviet communist system. And once you understand Soviet communism, which most people wouldn't know, Soviet communism is set on their face, but if you really understand Soviet communism, then you would understand the Democratic Party. So I'm saying that America today is either run by Nazis or communists. It would be a clever idea if we had an American government just for the hell of it, you know. But I don't think that's ever going to happen. Now, I know that there are a lot of people who have ideas about the future, and some see it as a very bright future because people are waking up and people are beginning to ask questions. And so it looks like there very well might be a silver lining to all of this tragedy that's been going on around the world, and especially in our republic. But as, again, my opinion, I believe that the light at the end of the tunnel is a train coming. I don't think that for 1 minute we're going to have a happy future. I think that we are being misled into believing that the whole world is one day going to wake up and we're all going to spiritually find our roots and come in contact with the Great Spirit of heaven, God, and we're going to be, all right in the future. I don't believe that for a minute. Because when you begin to look at, and again, it's just my opinion based on 50 years of looking at this subject, the age of Aquarius, first of all, I don't think the age of Aquarius is going to be here for at least another 300 or 400 years. I believe the age of Pisces began right around the 4th century AD. And so if you take 2,150 years from that, that would place the age of Aquarius in maybe 360 years from now. So we're not in the age of Aquarius, and it's probably just as well, because the age of Aquarius is not going to be what we're being told. It's going to be a time when people will have lost their humanity. They will have lost their sovereignty as human creatures, and they will be living under some kind of a fascist dictatorship if there's any kind of government left. So I don't see the future as very bright. As a matter of fact, I know it's not. But the one thing I would say to those who want a better future is to educate yourself, because be the change that you want to see. You need to educate yourself as to how the world works. Nothing works the way you think it does. And stop depending on humans to get you out of the problem. I mean, somebody said a long time ago, you cannot get the people who have put us in this place can't expect them to get us out of the trouble. They're the ones that put us into it. So I believe that the only hope is not for the human race. The only hope is for individuals who are called out of the human race, individuals who are able to handle the truth. That's a big subject too. People talk about wanting to know the truth. Actually, in point of fact, most people don't want to hear the truth. They want to hear what they want to hear. And they will always, this is a fact of life, that people have always and will always support what they want to hear. They will not financially or in any other way support what they don't want to hear. So people will always support what they want to hear, and that's why the preachers and TV ministers and all of the silly religious stuff that's going on this planet are telling people what they want to hear. That the Lord is coming back and everything's going to be wonderful and they're going to heaven, when actually, in fact, none of that is true. It's a complete misreading, purposely misreading of the scriptures. It's a purposely misreading of the Hebrew symbolism of the ancients. And so it's been my desire to point out the fact that there's a world of symbolism and hidden wisdom. I use the word occult. Occult simply means hidden. It's nothing evil, it just means hidden. And the real truth has been hidden from us. And so this has been my work, excuse me, this has been my work that I wanted to do, was at least give people an opportunity to see where things have come from, the etymology of words and terms and symbols, and where these dark secrets have come from that we're living by. There's a whole movement today throughout the world to rebuild Solomon's temple. We're hearing that Israel is spending $27 million on the reestablishment of Solomon's temple. And you hear the Christian retards jumping on the stage, falling all over themselves and talking about the Lord is going to have these Temple of Solomon rebuilt in Israel. Well, just understand all of this stuff about Israel's new temple that they're going to rebuild, this is all politics. It's all money, and it's all being directed by secret societies and fraternal orders out of Europe. And unless and until you understand what Solomon's temple really, in fact, symbolized and what the rebuilding of Solomon's temple really means, and unless you understand the symbolism of the Messiah and what the Messiah represents in fact, you're never going to figure out what's going on in our country and where we're going as a people. So I have to watch so many times what I'm saying in public. I've been warned about talking too much in public about things which would might get you hurt. Because in America, this is not a free country. There's nothing free about it. I like what Dick Gregory says. We talk about America, the land of the free and home of the brave, and he said, you're not free or brave. We're all slaves. And the reason why we're slaves is because we don't know anything. We're ignorant and ill-informed and unread, and we just don't know how government works, how banks work. And so I've been fortunate in my life to meet extraordinary people. I have said so many times, I'm not the world's foremost authority on anything. I don't want to be. Because if I make a mistake, well, I told you up front, I'm not the world's foremost authority. But what I have been able to do is I have been able, not by my own, but I believe the Spirit has allowed me to meet extraordinary people who are on the cutting edge, intellectually and spiritually, of what's actually happening on this planet today. And when you understand how banks actually, in fact, work, how the government is actually working and how it was set up, and who the founding fathers really were, then you will begin to see a whole different picture of where we are today and why we're in the mess we're in today. So I think that it's a very important subject, this whole idea of the last days, end times. I do also believe that the UFO, I know that we probably have all heard this quote that supposedly Dr. Werner von Braun told his secretary that in the last possible days that there would come a time when, excuse me, when the UFO would be presented to the whole world as a danger to the whole planet, etc., and that the whole thing would be a hoax. I suppose that's possible, But I don't think so. I think there's more to the story yet. Personally, from my own experience that I have had UFO experiences which are absolutely extraordinary. And I have had the opportunity to talk to people that have told me things which are absolutely unbelievable. And many years later find out that they're right. So it's just an article of my faith. I believe that there are extraterrestrial life forms here. I believe that they are far superior to anything we've got. And I think they've been watching us and manipulating us for a long time. And for many, many thousands of years, these ETs or extraterrestrials have been giving us our religious experiences, causing people to see things that confirms that their religion is correct. The Hindus, the Christians and Jews. I mean, when you talk about Judaism, there's a subject. I mean, when you get into the symbolism of Judaism, one of the most important symbols in Judaism is the six-pointed star, the hexagram. We call it today the Star of David. Even the Jewish encyclopedia will tell you that the Star of David has nothing to do with any David that ever lived, because there was no King David. But the Star of David, according to Jewish authorities, is referred to as the Star of Saturn. Saturn is one of the most important gods of the ancient Hebrew people. The ancient Hebrews worshiped many things. And you need to understand that we're told that the ancient Hebrews of the Old Testament were the first monotheistic people. Mono meaning one, theistic God. So they were the worshipers of one God, the monotheistic people. In point of fact, that's not true at all. That's ludicrous on the surface of it. Actually, the word is not monotheistic, it's heno. It's spelled H-E-N-O. Heno. Henotheistic means picking one from many. So if you have 10 gods lined up in front of you, 12 different gods, and you pick that one to be your God, and he agrees to become your God and you're going to be his follower, then you are the worshiper of one God. No, there's 12 gods, but you are the worshiper of that particular God. So therefore, in a matter of speaking, you're the worshiper of one God, but that doesn't mean there's only one God. That means that's the one you picked. So even the reference works on ancient Judaism will tell you that the ancient Hebrews were henotheistic, pickers of one God. And then you find out, no, there's actually even more to the story. Because in the ancient history, there was no ancient Israel to start with. Ancient Israel, as we are told today, ancient Israel of the ancient Middle East, that was back in the BC and 500 BC, before the Common Era, was an ancient place called ancient Israel. Ancient Israel never existed. Never existed. There was no such a thing as ancient Israel. And all the authorities and the paleontologists and archaeologists pretty well know that. It's just the people don't. And of course, the religious organizations that promote, like TBN and all this silly nonsense that goes for religion in America, are promoting this idea that the Lord's people and holy Israel, when in fact there was no Israel. And then you find out where the word Israel comes from, and then you start digging into the ancient history of the world, and you find out it has nothing, it bears no resemblance to the actual truth. And so, one of the ancient gods of the ancient Hebrews was the planet Saturn. And in relation to the ufology, it's very interesting. The symbol for the god Saturn, the planet and the god Saturn, incidentally, Saturn was referred to as the Lord of the Rings. And of course, Saturn is Lord of the Rings. And women were told in the ancient Phoenician Canaanite world, which we call Hebrew, but it wasn't Hebrew, it was Phoenician Canaanite. And the ancient BC world in the Middle East, women were told to listen to their God. So we come up with the concept of an ear ring, Lord of the Rings. Men were supposed to get married before their God, so we wear a wedding ring. So Saturn was referred to as Lord of the Rings, and they're still making movies today in Hollywood about Lord of the Rings. And then one of the movies and one of the series in the Lord of the Rings was the Two Towers. And then you begin to look at this concept of two towers. And what is that all about? The New York being the Empire State, and see the beginnings of the concept of two towers. And what does that mean? Why do you have the World Trade Center with two towers? Well, just go on the web and go to image and type in the word Twin Towers, and you will see all over the earth in every language, churches, religious institutions, commercial buildings, almost all have double towers, two towers. The two towers goes back to a very ancient occult symbolism. Today, most people have no idea in the world what Twin Towers means, what the implication of two towers really means. And so the Star of David, as I said, is the symbol. The hexagram is the symbol for the planet Saturn. It's called Saturn's star. And one of the gods of the ancient Phoenician Canaanite peoples, which we today call Judaism, or the Jews of the ancient world, they were called Phoenician Canaanites. Another one of their gods was the moon, of course. And the moon was referred to as, he was a god. The moon god was named Sin. The actual name of the moon god in the ancient world his name was Sin, S-I-N. And since the moon in Arabia and in Egypt, looking eastward from Egypt every night, and especially in Arabia, when the moon would come up in the east, there was high mountain ranges in Arabia. And so the moon in the evening would come up. And so the ancient peoples felt that the moon god, who was named Sin, lived in the mountain, and that he would only come out in the evening after sundown. And so the ancient world word, the word for a mountain in the ancient Phoenician language going way back, we refer to it today as Ai. The letter Ai was an ancient mountain. And so the moon god was named Sin, and he lived in the mountain Ai, and put the two together, it becomes Sinai. And so Sinai is a very holy, well, there's nothing holy about it. It's the moon god. And that's why when you begin to see how the moon worship, this is why even today Hebrews have their holy days after sundown. Why? It's because that's when the moon comes out, is after sundown. And so there's the worship of the moon god Sin, or Sinai. There's the worship of the planet Saturn, the six-pointed hexagram. And incidentally, even as some of you may know, on the planet Saturn today, the probes that went out there were photographing the North Pole of Saturn, and there's a hexagram, a six-pointed hexagram on the North Pole of the planet Saturn. Now it really gets interesting. Why would there be a hexagram on the planet Saturn? So I'm just saying that when you begin to really delve into the symbolism of Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, and we've talked about the ancient Hebrew religion, the ancient Christian religion, equally as filled with mysticism and symbols and occultism that today people have no idea in the world about. You'd be surprised how many people use the term Antichrist and have no idea what a Christ is. They have no idea where the word Christ comes from. And so if you don't understand Christ, then how could you possibly understand what an Antichrist is? And people don't mind telling you they're going to church and have no idea in the world where the word church comes from. You'd be ashamed of yourself if you knew where the word church comes from, or if you the etymology of the word. And so when you start breaking down words and ideas and concepts, and of course the Messiah is referred to as the light of the world. I mean, the Bible has Jesus saying, I am the light of the world. No man comes to the Father unless he comes through me. And he's referred to as God's Son, the light of the world. Well, of course the Son is the light of the world. What else lights the world if it's not the sun? The sun is out, and God's son, of course it's God's son, it's not your son, it doesn't belong to any race on the earth. The sun is in heaven. So therefore, it's God's son, not ours. And so God's son is our risen Savior. Well, of course the sun rises every morning. And the risen sun is your Savior. If it doesn't come up in 3 weeks, we're dead. So it is your risen Savior. And God's son, the light of the world, has 12 helpers. Of course he has 12 helpers. The 12 signs of the zodiac, the 12 months of the year. This is why you have 12 all over the Old and New Testament, because both the Old and New Testament is astrotheology. It's based on all ancient concepts in the Phoenician, Canaanite, Egyptian world of astrology. This is the actual hidden code in the Old and New Testament of the Bible. It's based on something referred to as astrotheology, the whole idea of the sun being our Savior. The ancient Egyptians said that the sun was pure energy, and pure energy is life. Without energy, you have no life. So when a battery runs out of energy completely, you'll say it's a dead battery. Well, when your body runs out of the energy, a biological energy of your body runs out, you are dead. So the ancient Egyptians said that God's son, the light of the world, our risen Savior, his name was Horus, H-O-R-U-S. Horus was the sun god. He walked across the sky in 12 steps. The ancient Egyptians said Horus walked across the sky in 12 steps. It was a 12-step program. And today, we still have our 12-step programs for alcoholics and kids going to school. You start in the first grade, and you walk through the whole system to the 12th grade. It's a 12-step program. Why? Because the ancient Egyptians said that Horus, our risen Savior, the Messiah, walks across the sky in 12 steps. And so we take the word Horus, H-O-R-U-S, and change the R and the U to U-R, and make it H-O-U-R-S. Now it becomes 12 hours instead of 12 Horus. And of course, Horus was the sun god who walked across the sky in 12 steps, and he brought light into the world. And when he left the whole world. When he leaves on the 12th hour, whenever the 12th hour, he leaves, he's gone. And now, since God's son, the light of the world, is gone, he leaves the whole world in the hands of the Prince of Darkness. The Prince of Darkness, of course, it gets dark when the sun goes down. And so the Prince of Darkness in Egypt was called Set, S-E-T. Well, today we say it gets dark at sunset. And so you begin to see how words and terms we accept in our religions have come from ancient Egyptian symbolism, ancient Phoenician, Canaanite symbolism. And it's at this point I want to reiterate this point, that what we call today modern-day Judaism is actually a Phoenician Canaanite religion. The very Hebrew language is not what is called can't remember the name right now. There's a word for it in the dictionary. It's not a language which was only for a particular people. What we call today Hebrew was a very well-known language in the Middle East. It was not Hebrew, it was called Phoenician Canaanite, the Phoenician language. But the Hebrews spoke the Phoenician language, so we say it's Hebrew. No, it's not Hebrew, it's Phoenician, but the Hebrews speak it. And so once you understand that there was no original Hebrew language, it was a Phoenician language, which today we refer to as Hebrew. Then you start looking at, well, okay, what about the Phoenician religion? Oh, well, now you begin to see where the ancient stories in the Bible come from. They're Phoenician Canaanite. They're not Hebrew. And then, of course, as I said, you see that the Christian religion is not what you thought it was. It's based on astrotheology. It's based on astrology. And as I said, I'm going back now, just go back for a moment to this concept of the sun walking through the sky in 12 steps. Horus, the sun god. And so the sun brings light into the world. Well, in Latin, light was Lucius. And we get Lucius, we get, if you want to personify and make a person out of light, Lucius personified as Luke. So any name Luke comes from the Latin word for the sun, light, the sun god, Luke or Lucius, the light bringer. This is why in Star Wars you have Luke Skywalker, and he does battle with Darth Vader, the Prince of Darkness. And then you begin to see, well, the whole idea of Star Wars is a war that has been the basis for all religion in the world. And let me go back and state this a second time better. The basis for all religion on the earth today can be boiled down to its most common denominator. All religions today can be boiled down to the war in heaven, Star Wars. And this is what George Lucas and others like him know. The oldest religion in the world was the war between the sun and darkness, between light and darkness. And today, that's exactly where it still stands today. The great war on the earth is actually in the heavens. The war of all wars is between the light of day and the darkness of night. So either you're in the light or you're running around in the dark. The dark was always represented as evil, stupidity, ignorance, ill-informed ignorance. You're in the dark. But when you are in the light, you say, oh, it finally dawned on me. Yeah, the sun has finally come up in your brain, and you finally figured out something for the first time, and the light, and you say, oh, I see. Now that dawns on me now what you're talking about. Yeah, in other words, now the sun has entered into your dark world, into your dark thinking, and you finally figured out what's going on. So as I said, there is a very powerful encoded story and in the Bible. And I think that that's what's happening today, and that's one of the things that keeps driving me to do what I do, is because I'm concerned that people do not realize that they're in the dark. They think they have the light. But by their fruits, like the Bible has Jesus saying, by their fruits you shall know them. Well, what is the fruitage of our religions today in the Western world? Judaism and Christianity have given us nothing but wars, violence, hatred, belligerency. It's all over the world now. Wars are going on between peoples who are killing each other and children being murdered by Jews, Christians, and Islamic peoples. And then when you find out the Islamic world is no different, they're worshiping a meteorite and a rock. Their God is a pet rock. And let me ask why you have why do you have the Dome of the Rock? The temple in Jerusalem is called the Dome of the Rock. And so when you understand that the whole worship in Islam is a very far more ancient religion that existed in the Arabic world long before Muhammad was ever alive in the Middle East, long before Muhammad. The same basic religion was already there in the Arabic countries. And it, like everything else, it matured and was translated and evolved until today we have a modern day Islamic religion. But the Islamic religion is based on a far more ancient religion that was already in existence that brought in the worship of the planet Saturn. As I said, Saturn worship is very prominent in Islam. And also Islam is also covered with the worship of Isis or the Virgin. And so Virgo is very important in the Islamic religion. All the different planets were given and assigned different colors. Mars, of course, is red, we know, and Venus was associated with the color green. All the ancient world, if you look up the color symbolism, the planet Venus was always associated with the color green. This is why in Islamic countries today, on their flags and coats of arms, etc., you will find that their harlotry and coats of arms are always in the color green. because green was the color of Virgo, the Virgin. So they're worshiping, in the Arabic world, they're worshiping meteorites, the great stone at Mecca. And that's another whole story. Mecca in Saudi Arabia, the holiest of all holy places, like the Vatican for Islam, is called Mecca. And in the center of Mecca is a black square. The black square represented, that's another term for the esoteric name for the planet Saturn. One of the ancient occult symbols for the planet Saturn, along with being the hexagram, was another symbol associated with Saturn was the black square. This is why so many buildings today, and just go on the web and put in black cube or the Saturnalian black cube, a black cube of Saturn. And you'll see there are hundreds of websites talking about the ancient religion that today we call Islam, which was the worship of the planet Saturn, the black cube in Mecca. And of course, going around, circulating around the black cube 7 times. That was an old ancient ritual. So all I'm saying is that both Judaism, Christianity, and Islam today are nothing more than the retelling of far, far more ancient religions that are based on things that you've never even heard. And so I would suggest that if you're really sincerely interested in connecting yourself with the true and the most powerful spirit in the universe that men have called God, that I will tell you the easiest way to do that. First of all, forget all of this stuff about religion, because religion is nothing more than a way of manipulating the human race, period. And all one needs to do is just spend some time in a library researching. My detractors will say that I'm full of bull, but they haven't spent 50 minutes on something I've spent 50 years looking at. So when you understand that religion as such is going down the tubes, it's an apparatus that's had its day. Religion is on its way out. And we are seeing the coming of a new time on the earth when men will finally, the human race is going to come face to face with the reality that they have been fooled and lied to, and they didn't see it coming. I don't often do this, and I'm going out on a limb to do this, but I think I'm going to make you a prophecy. And I feel very positive about this. I believe that next year, sometime after maybe April, there's going to begin a tsunami or an avalanche of exposés on conspiracy coming into the world. I believe that sometime about March or April, you're going to see the beginnings of a period of time when all kinds of apparatus and conspiracies are going to begin to come out. And the news media is not going to be able to laugh it off and shine it on like these paid whores that we call news people in America today. They're all prostitutes. And I think that there's going to come a time next year, as I said, I believe about April it will start. I mean, it's already begun, but no, it really hasn't started yet. I think there's going to be a time next year when all kinds of conspiracies are going to come out. And UFO stuff, religion, government, banking, and it's just going to be an avalanche of dark, dirty laundry coming out, and the media, the paid lackeys of this world system, are not going to be able to tee-hee and laugh it off on television, on nightly news like they do. They sit and chuckle with each other at their little silly conversations. I think there's going to be a very dark and serious time that America is going to come face to face with the divine reality of heaven. We have been had and we've been lied to, and now it is time, cosmically time, that we now pay the price to see what we have done what we have allowed to be done in our name. We're going to see that the religions were lies, the banking stores were lies, our government was nothing but a sham, a bunch of communists and Nazis, and that the entire superstructure of Western civilization is in the hands of people who couldn't care less about the human race. It's all business, like the mafia says. It's just business. Somebody was going to control you. Somebody, and if they're going to control you, they're going to rip you off. And so I think that we're going to begin to see something very bad coming on the earth starting next year. And as I said, media is not going to be able to shine it on and laugh it off. It's going to be really an extraordinary time for America. And I don't know how the Americans are going to deal with it. They may not be able to. But that's their problem. And they can't say they haven't been warned. So, when we're talking about religion, it's all man-made, the whole thing. But there is actually a profound, as I said, importance in understanding spirituality. I would suggest that you do something just as an experiment. Go into your inner chambers, go into your a room or out in the yard or someplace where you're alone. Try it. Go someplace where you're alone and audibly talk to the Spirit. Talk audibly, not in a low tone in a prayer like, no. Sit and talk to the spirit world as if there was someone very powerful sitting here listening to you. Talk to the Spirit and ask the Spirit to guide you, to protect you, but also to make sure that you meet who you're supposed to meet, make sure that you learn what you're supposed to learn, and ask the Spirit to show me what it is I'm supposed to do with my life. I want to be of service to the universe. I want to do something for my fellow man and before God, so to speak. Ask the Spirit, but you have to do it audibly. Talk and ask for direction, protection, guidance, and then ask the Spirit, show me a sign that you are here. Show me a sign that you're actually hearing me and that you're actually here, and I'm not talking to myself. Give me a sign that I will know that you have heard me. And watch what happens. And try not to be too frightened or too surprised if something really strange happens to you. Because after all, you ask. And, like Jesus, like the Bible has Jesus saying, you have not because you ask not. Ask and you will receive. So when you talk audibly to this great Spirit, that universal God force out there is hearing you. You don't think so? Try it. You'll find out that there's something going on right around you you never knew, and it has got nothing to do with your religion. It has nothing to do with what color you are or where you come from on earth or what your culture is. It just don't matter. I mean, I've heard so many Christians tell me that their son was dying or their daughter was sick or their husband was dying, and they prayed to their God, and he got better, and the child got better, and everything was fine because the Lord Jesus came in and answered their prayers. And I said, no. The same stories I have heard from Hindus and Buddhists, from Native Americans, from people in Europe, from people in Egypt. I've heard the same stories around the planet, around the world. And it has nothing to do with your particular religion. God is too big for one religion. It has to do with the divine presence in the universe that overshadows all of mankind. And it doesn't care about your silly, nonsensical religion or your little cultural differences. There is a divine presence in the earth that overshadows the earth from the heavens, from out there, that is far wiser and far more powerful than you even begin to suspect. And if you actually, I think it's probably a law in the spirit world that you have to initiate a conversation. The Great Spirit does not butt into your life, so to speak. But if you yourself ask the Great Spirit in the universe, show me a sign that you're hearing me. Talk to me, give me a sign. Watch what happens. all of a sudden strange things begin to happen to you. You're meeting the right people. You're being led to find new friends with new information, new things that you didn't even know existed. And you find that you're being protected. All of a sudden, you're being protected from things that other people are falling victim to. So all I'm saying is that there is a divine presence in the universe that men have called God. It has nothing to do with religion. It's not on TV. It's out there. And in relation to whatever's out there, you can ask a 7-year-old child, where is God? And the child would point out there. Of course it's out there. Do you believe in angels? Well, Jews and Christians and Islamic peoples believe in angels. Well, where do angels come from? Cincinnati, New York, where do they come from? Even a child would tell you angels come from out there. Well, I hate to tell you this, but anything that comes from out there is extraterrestrial. And if it's coming from out there, it means it's smarter than you, because you're not out there going to where they are. They're coming here. So that means they're smarter than you are. And they're coming from out there. So don't think it's funny and humorous to talk about extraterrestrials, because all 3 major religions of the book and all the peoples of the world, Zechariah Sitchin's brought that out, and he's not the only person who's brought that point out, that all over the world, the ancient world, there are writings and holy scriptures of all kinds of people in the ancient and prehistoric world talking about they who have come from out there. So I'm totally convinced that there's something to that. I do believe we're being manipulated, exploited, and guided by a darker force, good and evil. I think there are good ones and bad ones. And we need to understand that that's the very idea of good and bad angels, good and bad. So what I'm saying is that I think it's an idea whose time has come to start thinking in terms of true spirituality and connecting ourselves with the divine, and getting out of the way of all of this man-made politics, religion, and nonsense, which is nothing more than a corporate way to collect money and manipulate politics. I was told by an FBI agent many years ago, called me in Glendale when I had my office there, and he said, Jordan, I want to tell you that your government has been watching you for a long time. We go to the events and sit and listen to you. And he said, but as of now, your government is not a threat to you. We don't see anything you're doing to be a threat to the establishment. So your government does not see you as a threat yet. And he said, but the reason why is because we're seeing that people are hearing you. And as long as people hear you, you're not a threat. It's when people begin to listen to you. Now we'll have to take another look at what you're doing. And he says, but I just want you to know that we are the working class people of the FBI. We know who you are, and we respect what you're doing. But when you start talking about religion, if people begin to listen to you, you're going to have a very big enemy, and it will not be your government. It's going to be the church. It's going to be religion. And he said to me, FBI agent, San Diego, he said, religion is organized crime. At its highest levels, organized crime. The church is nothing more than an organized criminal syndicate that manipulates politics, makes money, and will kill you if you get in the way. You don't think so? Go back and look at the Inquisitions. Go back and look what happened to Europe in the Dark Ages. Go back and look at what's going on in Israel today, killing innocent people all over the place because the Lord told them that this land is ours. So you need to understand religion today is organized crime. Criminals who prance around in women's dresses and robes and consider themselves holy when in fact they're nothing more than common criminals. And the Vatican, of course, is as far as I'm concerned, the Vatican is my favorite subject. I was born and raised Catholic. I understand the Nazi Vatican matrix. I understand what that church is doing. And that's a whole story in itself, the Nazi connection to the Vatican. So all of this I'm saying to, and many of you have already heard me say these things before, but I think it's really important now that you begin to realize that something is coming. There is some kind of a problem, and trouble coming on the earth. When you get as many people as there are today in billions, when you collectively get billions of people who collectively have an IQ of 60, and now put them into a situation purposely where there will be a lack of food, and begin to stir up troubles between these peoples, you're going to see big wars coming, far, far bigger than what you see now. And there's going to be some serious bloodshed and some serious repercussions that the masters of this planet, the men who think that they own us, and they look at us as ownership of property, they are getting ready to do some incredible things with us, we humans. And so I think that the only thing to do today is not to depend on your religious associations. You better go back to God. You better go back to the Spirit and ask the Spirit to protect you, because when trouble comes, that's the only thing that's going to protect you, is if you are protected by the Great Spirit. So that I just wanted to make sure you understand. I have a video I'd like to do. It's a few minutes after 8. We started at 6:30. I think probably because this will be a 2-hour presentation, I don't think I'm going to do this. I think if you wanted to see this subject, I've got a video that you would be seeing me redoing the video today. So I think I will just invite you to just get the video. It's called King Solomon's Temple. And for the first time, understand what King Solomon, what that whole story about King Solomon really is all about. Solomon, King Solomon. There was no King Solomon. There was no King David. There was no ancient Israel. There was no Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. I remember asking Rabbi Entelman many years ago about, I asked him, I said, Rabbi, the people in the Bible, the names in the Old Testament, did they actually live? Were there actual people in the Old Testament that really lived? And he said to me, the Bible is a story. It's called the greatest story ever told. It's a story. It's not the greatest collection of facts that have ever been assembled. It's a story. And it's an encoded story. It's a very, very powerful and spiritually powerful encoded story. And if you don't know the code, then you're never going to see what they were really saying in the Old Testament. And then you begin to see how the story is unfolding, for instance, with King Solomon. Solomon is S-O-L-O-M-O-N. Sol, S-O-L, is the sun in Latin. O-M is Om. The principle of creation in the ancient Hindu was the priest of Om. And On was the city of On in Egypt. The Egyptians had a city called the City of the Sun. It was called On. And the Greeks came into the city On, the city of the sun, and they called it Heliopolis. Helios for the sun, and Opolis is for the city. So the city of the sun was Heliopolis. No, the Egyptians called it On. And so you take the 3 words for the sun in the ancient esoteric languages, Sol, Latin, Om, Hindu, On, Egyptian. Put it together, it becomes Solomon, King Solomon. No, the sun obviously is king. That's why you have Walt Disney making movies about the Sun King. Well, of course the sun is king. And as I was going to say it, I got off the subject. And the ancient Egyptians said that the sun was pure energy, and that the sun was giving energy to the universe so it could live. So the sun gives us on the earth energy, which our plants grow and we can grow. And so the sun is giving energy so that we might live. Well, just think about it. If the sun were to keep its energy and not share its energy with the universe and share its energy with us, we wouldn't be here. But for the reason that the sun is giving us energy, it's giving us his life. So we say that God's son has given his life so that we might live. And so that's where all of this story in the New Testament about Jesus comes from. It's an encoded story. And I'm suggesting that you might want to begin to look at the Old and New Testament in a different way, because it's an extraordinary story of the real spiritual story which is going on the earth. There's a war. According to the Bible, there's a war. The Apostle Paul said there's a war inside of us. Half of us are evil and the other half is good. You know, half of us lives in the light and the other half is in dark. I had some teenagers in San Diego one night when I was working in San Diego. I came out and the comet, Halley's Comet, was out. And a bunch of teenagers were standing out in the parking lot, and they were looking at the comet. And I came out, so I stood with these kids. And they were very nice, ordinary teenagers. And one of them said, and they were looking up, and I said, "It's beautiful, isn't it?" And they said, "Yes, what is it?" And I said, "It's a comet." And they said, "Well, what is a comet?" So I tried to explain to them the difference between a meteorite and a comet. And one of the teenage boys said to me, he said, "You know, we have always had a question that we've all wondered about that maybe you could answer for us." And I said, "I'll try." And he said, "Where does the sun go when it leaves? When it goes down, where does it go?" And I thought, I was shocked. And I said, "Are you joking with me?" He said, "No. Where does the sun go?" So I'm telling you, when our educational system today has not taught our children even at where the sun goes when it goes down. And also, it brings up to my mind, on the computer, on videos on the computer, there's a Canadian company. You know how Jay Leno on Tonight Show goes out in the street as jaywalk and he talks to people and you can see how profoundly stupid these people are? Well, in Canada, there's a television show like it where the Canadians come to America. And they have this one guy who is an absolute genius because he can play a joke on you, but keep a straight face and very serious. And they film him, and he goes to politicians and asks them for their comments on things, and it's outrageous. It's absolutely outrageous, the kind of comments that he gets from politicians. One of them was that he went to Huckabee, the senator or congressman or whatever that goofball is, Huckabee, who was running for president. And he goes up to Huckabee and he says, "Senator Huckabee," he said, "we're from Canada. And Canada has, it's the national capital of Canada is an igloo. And the igloo during the summer tends to begin to melt. And so what we're doing in Canada, the Canadian people demanded it, and the government is now, we're building a dome over our igloo, our national igloo, and we're doing it so that we can protect it, and we'll air condition it to keep it so it doesn't melt. And we'd like for you to congratulate our government for doing something for the people." And Huckabee says, as a senator in America, I want to say I'm representing America, and by God, Canada, we applaud you and your government for doing this great thing to protect your capital of Canada, your igloo, et cetera, et cetera. And I'm thinking, my Lord and my God, this guy is mentally deranged. And then it goes on. Just watch it. Canadians interviewing American politicians. And I've been in the company of American politicians who are mentally retards. They are. They are mentally retarded. I was surprised at how much Jerry Brown didn't know when he was governor. I happened by chance to be in downtown Los Angeles at the governor's office. And he comes out by chance. He just came out of his office, and I was talking about some research I was doing. I wanted to get into the files of the LAPD, which I ended up doing. And when you talk to people like the governor and like these senators, it's shocking how much they don't know. They have no idea in the world what you're talking about. When I ask them about organized crime, they look at me with their glassy eyes. They don't know what you're talking about. I said, "The mafia, La Cosa Nostra." And "You mean what? What are you talking about?" I said, and it just dawned on me, I'm talking to an idiot. Look who I'm talking to. Who knew? I'm sitting here talking to an imbecile And then when I found out and I've had way too many experiences in my life where I've been in the company of mafia people, mafia guys. I've been in the company of some very powerful people, presidential assistants and governors. So I've been in the company of a lot of interesting and powerful people. And I watch what they do and what they say, and it's frightening how much people in power today do not know. And all you've got to do is talk with the priest and clergy, and you'll find out they have no idea what they're doing. I mean, they honor the Pope. How many people honor the Pope and never even realize where that word comes from? The word Pope comes from a Latin word for Papa. He's your Holy Father. But Papa comes from an old word in the Latin. Papa, your Papa, comes from a Latin word for a door. So a Papa is a door. Well, of course, your Papa is a door. He's a door to life. He opened the door to life for you, so he's your Papa. And of course, doors can't open without a hinge. So in Latin, a hinge is a cardinal. So that's why you have a cardinal point on the zodiac, a cardinal point on the map. So Papa he is the door to the mysteries of Babylon, to the Chaldean mysteries. So the Pope is open the door. He opens the door to the Babylonian, Chaldean, occult, magical system in the ancient prehistoric world to you. And so he's your Papa, the Holy Father. There's nothing holy in Rome, period. Rome has never been holy. It is filled with bloodshed, violence. All the Middle Ages, all of Europe attest to the fact that there was bloodshed all over Europe because of the Holy Father. And there's nothing holy in Israel, as I've said. There's nothing holy in Utah. I don't care where your religion is. There's certainly nothing holy in Saudi Arabia. There's nothing holy in Islam, nothing. It has no value, no human value, nothing redeemable in all three religions. The only hope for the mankind is true spirituality and intellectual discernment. This is what the great Masonic orders in the very beginning of this country stood for. The great Masonic orders, and of course you wouldn't have a free country. You wouldn't even have America. You wouldn't even have the freedoms that you got left today if it was not for the Masonic order and a handful of Freemasons standing up for your freedom and dying on the field of battle to win our freedom just so we can turn around and watch TV. Unless you understand that the entire superstructure of this country was founded by an organization of men that we today refer to roughly as the Masonic orders, you need to understand that Masonry stood for individual creativity, wisdom, knowledge, research, study, and to protect those people who wanted to stand up against power, to protect those people from power so that you could speak truth in front of the powers that be. So I don't have any problems with the Masonic orders of America. I don't even have any problem with the concept of the Masonic fraternities throughout the world. I don't have any problem with that. My God, we got that everywhere. We got Democrats, that's a group, that's a chosen group. We got Republicans, we got Hindus, we got Catholics. All of these are fraternal orders of sorts. So I don't have anything against fraternal orders. I think mankind naturally gravitates toward those who are of like minds. I don't have any problem with that. But I do have a problem with what's going on today. Because, and the reason why I'm saying all of this is because I know that my name has been associated with exposing the dark underpinnings of world Freemasonry and all this kind of conspiratorial apparatus, which is true, it's all out there. But I'm also well aware that the handful of people who gave us our freedom and gave us our country were themselves Masons and Rosicrucians. So I don't see any problem with individuals. I think the problem today, if we're going to talk about problems of a fraternal order, it's the same problem exists in all man-made institutions, all churches, all governments, all fraternal orders have good and bad in them. There's good Masons, there are bad ones. There are good Catholics and bad Catholics. I have learned one thing for sure, that if you're good no matter what you are. You can be a good Catholic, a good Mormon, it doesn't matter. If you're bad no matter what you are. So it has nothing to do with your religion, your race, your color, or your fraternal order. It has to do with who you are. And too many people don't even know who they are. All they're doing is just going along to get along and flowing with the flow. And that's where our great country is at today. We are now on our knees to our masters because we're ignorant, ill-informed, self-centered, and egotistical, and have no idea in the world where all of this stuff has come from. So in conclusion, what I would say, that if anything is going to save you, I do not believe the country can be saved. I do not believe the human race as an experiment. And I think that's what we humans are, somebody else's experiment. Whoever has come from out there and intervened, I don't believe evolution at all. I think the word is intervention. I think someone came here a long time ago and intervened in our natural evolution and created us. The Christians will say that we did not come from monkeys. We did not evolve from monkeys. I agree. We are evolving into monkeys. We are becoming more and more stupid every day. And it's because we have lazy mental habits. We don't care to question anything. And it's just as well because so many people can't even read anymore. They don't read. They don't think. And so I think if there's going to be any kind of salvation, it's not going to come for the country and it's not going to come for the world. So don't look for our earth in thousands of years to come to be some great and glorious place to live. It's not going to be. The only thing that's going to save this human race are us from the ground up. That's the way this country was founded, was from the ground up, not from the top down. The top down is nothing more than royalty, people who manipulate and exploit the masses and keep them ignorant. So I would say that the thing we need to do today is start concentrating on reading and studying and questioning everything. Question governments, question the courts, question authority, because that's the great Masonic way. And go back, if you want to talk about Freemasonry, go back to the Middle Ages and see what happened to people who challenged the Roman Catholic Church. Give it a try and see. Today we talk about how the great Christian establishment in Europe, go back and look at that great Christian establishment and see how many men, women, and children were murdered by the Catholic Church and by the Christian religion. So I guess in conclusion, I would say, if I leave any message with you at all, you need to start understanding that you need to connect yourself with the divine spirit in a quiet way. Talk to the spirit. Ask it for protection and guidance. Ask the spirit to guide you to meet who you're supposed to meet, to protect you in your everyday life. And as I said, then ask the spirit to show you that it's here. You'll be surprised what's going to happen to you. And thank you.